definitely have gold fever. People probably know me best from Alaska Last Frontier because my family, the Kilchers, are on there for homesteading show.
Homer, Alaska, sits at the edge of Kachemak Bay, where the mountains drop straight into the sea and the winters test everyone who stays. For 17 years, that landscape was the backdrop to a marriage the world thought it understood. Jane and Lee Kilcher built a life there together, on a homestead that had belonged to the Kilcher family for generations, and for over a decade, millions of viewers watched them do it. Then, on a Sunday in July 2023, Jane Kilcher sat down and wrote a short, plain sentence on Facebook that ended the story fans thought they knew. There was no press conference, no tabloid exclusive, no dramatic reveal orchestrated by a network. Just a woman, alone with her phone, telling the truth in her own words. Before any of that, though, there was a beginning worth understanding, because it explains why the ending mattered so much to so many people. Jane and Lee both grew up in and around Homer, though their paths to each other were not simple. Jane had been married before, to a man named Dikran Kasuni, and had a daughter, Piper, born in 2003. Lee had also been married previously, to Nantia Crescentu, and had a son, Etienne, born in 2001. Both arrived at their relationship carrying the weight and experience of lives already lived, families already started, and lessons already learned the hard way. According to interviews given over the years, they reconnected later in life, bonded in part over a shared love of music, and were married on November 7th, 2006, at the Kilcher homestead. It was not the story of two young sweethearts. It was the story of two adults who had already been tested by loss and disappointment, choosing to build something steadier the second time. That steadiness became public in 2011, when Discovery Channel premiered Alaska, The Last Frontier, a series following the extended Kilcher family, distant relatives of the singer Jewel, as they lived off the land in one of the country's harshest environments. Jane and Lee quickly became two of the show's most compelling figures. Lee was the outdoorsman, at ease with a rifle or a fishing rod, comfortable in the wilderness, in a way that felt inherited rather than performed. Jane, a registered nurse and former commercial fisherwoman by trade, brought something different. Dry humor, visible toughness, and an unwillingness to soften herself for the cameras. Fans noticed. Over the following seasons, Jane became one of the most talked about personalities on the show, not because producers pushed her into the spotlight, but because audiences responded to how unfiltered she was. Then came August 2015, and the day everything changed. On August 10th, Lee was hiking near Otter Cove, a rugged stretch of coastline along Kachemak Bay, when he lost his footing and fell approximately 40 feet off a cliff. According to reporting at the time by the Anchorage Daily News and Homer News, Alaska State Troopers confirmed that his injuries were too severe for him to be transported by boat, and he had to be medevaced out by helicopter. The extent of the damage, later detailed by Jane herself in a public statement, and confirmed through hospital records referenced in subsequent lawsuit filings, was staggering. A broken arm, a broken shoulder, a fractured hip, a fractured ankle, more than a dozen broken ribs, and 2 collapsed lungs. This was not a stunt, and it was not staged for the show. It was a genuine, near-fatal accident that happened while cameras were nowhere near him. Jane was the one who made the injuries public, writing on Facebook at the time that Lee had suffered a terrible fall, describing the litany of injuries and asking for patience from fans during what she called a challenging time for the family. In the months that followed, Discovery Channel incorporated his recovery into the show itself, airing footage of him in intensive care at Central Peninsula Hospital, with Jane by his side. Lee later posted his own updates, including hospital photos and x-rays, at one point writing publicly about how hard it was to fully process how badly injured he had been, and thanking his family for staying close through the recovery. A year later, in 2016, he marked the anniversary of the fall with another post reflecting on what he called a hard recovery. One he said had changed things, though he still considered himself fortunate to have his health, his family, and his friends. What is far less speculative than fans have often assumed is what happened next. Atzlee eventually filed a lawsuit against Otter Cove Resort, seeking $100,000 in damages. Court documents, first reported by outlets including The Blast, allege that the area where he fell was inadequately marked, without proper signage warning of the sudden, steep drop. The resort denied any liability, arguing in its response that Atzlee had assumed the risks associated with recreational hiking on the property, and that any injury was the result of his own actions, not their negligence. That legal dispute played out over roughly 2 years following the accident, largely outside the frame of the television show that had made the family famous. For Jane, the accident marked a turning point that had nothing to do with a courtroom. In the years after the fall, Atzlee's presence on the show, and by extension in the day-to-day rhythm of the homestead, visibly shifted. He was seen spending increasing amounts of time working alone, particularly on a remote cabin project separate from the main homestead. Jane, meanwhile, continued to appear consistently, handling the physical demands of homestead life, raising the couple's children and maintaining an active, engaged social media presence that fans came to rely on for glimpses into the family's world. Longtime viewers began noticing the difference in tone between the two of them online. Jane still posting, still responding to fans, still sharing moments from daily life, while Atzlee's public presence grew sparser. By December 2022, speculation about the state of their marriage had already picked up, driven in part by Jane's appearance on another Discovery series, Bering Sea Gold, where she joined gold miner Emily Riedel's team for a stretch of the season, a choice that placed her, quite literally, somewhere other than the homestead she shared with Atzlee. Fans debated what it meant. Jane did not confirm or deny anything at the time. Then, on July 23rd, 2023, she did. In a Facebook post that would be picked up and reported on by entertainment outlets almost immediately, Jane wrote simply, "Here we go. Atzlee is divorcing me, and it is very unfortunate, but I cannot control it. Lost my best friend, and it hurts, but I guess that is life. It won't stop me." There was no elaboration, no accusation, no attempt to explain what had led to the decision. She did not name a cause. She did not assign blame. She stated a fact, acknowledged the grief that came with it, and made clear she intended to keep moving forward regardless. The reaction was immediate. Longtime viewers who had watched the couple for over a decade were, by most accounts, genuinely surprised, even though in hindsight, some pointed to the growing distance visible on screen in recent seasons as a sign something had been wrong. Atzlee, for his part, did not respond publicly. He offered no statement, no counter-narrative, no interview addressing what had happened or why. That silence has continued in the years since. As of this writing, he has not spoken publicly about the reasons for the split. Jane, by contrast, did not disappear, but she also did not turn the divorce into a public spectacle. On November 1st, 2023, she posted a simple selfie with the caption single, a quiet, almost understated way of confirming that the separation was final and that she was choosing to move forward openly rather than in hiding. She continued her work on Alaska. The Last Frontier continued to appear alongside other members of the extended Kilcher family and kept building her relationship with fishing charters and her own projects separate from the identity she had built as half of a television couple. She has, at times, faced online criticism about her appearance and her personal life, the kind of scrutiny that seems to follow reality television figures long after the cameras finish rolling on a particular chapter, and she has generally responded to it with directness rather than retreat. What stands out, looking at the full record, rather than the rumors that swirled around it for years, is how little drama Jane actually offered the public. She never released a tell-all interview naming specific grievances. She never used interviews or social media to portray Lee as a villain. She confirmed the divorce, acknowledged the pain of losing what she called her best friend, and largely kept the details of what led to that outcome to herself. In an industry and a media environment that often rewards public conflict, that restraint is itself notable, whether one reads it as privacy, dignity, or simply exhaustion after years of living a private life in public. The story of Jane and Lee Kilcher, as it can actually be verified, is not one of scandal or betrayal laid bare for an audience. It is the story of two people who built something together in one of the hardest environments in the country, who weathered a genuinely life-threatening accident, and who ultimately arrived at an ending that Jane chose to announce honestly, briefly, and without theater. The rest, whatever it may be, remains theirs. What we do know is that Jane Kilcher kept showing up, kept working, and kept telling the truth, as much of it as she chose to tell on her own terms, which may be the most honest way anyone can end a story that so many people felt they had a right to watch.